very much, Paul. I would like to thank all our colleagues who made presentations of the country studies in the volume. I would now like to invite our discussants, the experts, who are not contributors to the volume, so that we get a sense of what the peer group thinks of us. I'm going to begin with Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya. Most people know him. He has been associated with the Center for Policy Dialogue for a long time, including being its director, and has also served as ambassador of Bangladesh to the UN in Geneva. Devapriya?
Yes, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed what I call an historical pleasure to be at the SACEPS meeting, you know, particularly when so many things are happening in South Asia. And my particular point of satisfaction is that Center for Policy Dialogue, CPD, under the, the most inspiring leadership of Professor Rehman Soban, had been the house of SACEPS for almost a decade. And since then, it has been carried forward through Kathmandu to now to in the able hands of RIS. So I'm really, really proud and privileged to be here today. In Bengali, they say the best things in a food, in particular when it comes to yogurt, is that the top of the yogurt is best. But in Bengali, they say when you make a yogurt shake, it's the end of the yogurt shake which is the best. So this 3-day conference, the best of it has been saved for the end. And I'm so pleased that you are all here together over here. So thank you very much, and I'm happy and proud that our center, CPD, and other colleagues who are here have contributed to it on this. So I'm reminded of the very old incidents when a reviewer was asked, when he was giving very strong and very flamboyant comments on an output, and he was asked, did you read the book? And he responded that I do not bias my opinion by reading the book before writing a report, And I am in that particular position today, that I'm going to review a book, and I am not biased. I can tell you that I have not read the book. But whatever I have heard from all my eminent predecessors, the colleagues who have spoken, let me pick up a couple of issues, and basically I have been given an instruction, keep it within 7 minutes, and I will try to do that. And the 7 minutes starts now. So the issue is, I would put that if you go through these trends which have been put forward to you, I pick from there a set of common trends which are there. What common trends with some kind of differences? The first one, of course, the manufacturing share. Other than, as Professor Deepak Nair mentioned, other than Bangladesh, in most cases, the share of manufacturing is falling as a share of GDP. But also what is interesting, the manufacturing employment is falling as well, except in Nepal. So you see, in one country, it's a share of GDP. The other country is a share of the employment. You see, it is not moving together. I'm trying to take an overview. If you look at again but in the case of female employment, it's even diverse. 4 countries are having higher employment in the female employment. Other countries are falling in certain ways. In India, it is falling. But if you look at Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, it is increasing. So again, it doesn't fall into a pattern. That's what I'm trying to tell you, how diverse. If you look at the merchandise export, very interestingly, manufactured merchandise exports is falling as a share of GDP. It is falling also as a share of exports. Now, I can go on these trends for quite some time, and including the population projections and the aging of the population issue, and the future, how you look at the market, whether it's a closed economy or in a global system economy you're looking at. So all these issues are there. So let me summarize at least 4 particular dilemma which we are dealing with it through this current situation. The first one, are we observing structural change or structural transformation? So structural change would entail any of the changes in the GDP composition, but not necessarily towards the sustenance of it, sustainability, and other issues over there. Structural transformation will entail much more progressive, higher productivity reallocation of both in terms of employment and other issues over there. So are we seeing structural change or structural transformation in South Asia? I am not supposed to answer to these questions within 5 minutes. So the second dilemma which will come along with it is this dualism versus diversification. Now, the study is mentioned, as I have flipped through it, talks about the dualism. But the nature of the dualism is important, because we have talked about the dualism since the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Are we seeing an entrenched part of dualism which is going to stay for all time to come anyway? And is its share is really decreasing, and as it goes? And the antidote to that is the diversification as within the sectors, intersectoral or sectoral diversification, whether it is the services or within the sector, we are saying that, or as much as industrialization of the agriculture. So not to say of the services. So is it diversification is the answer to that dualism, or it is going to stay over there for as we go? The third one is the quantity versus quality. The quantity versus quality is that we are saying, observing, there is an insider-outsider problem already over here. And that is reflected through the fact that those who are in, they are getting their income high, and those who are out, they are being perennially marginalized and not being able to get in, either because of the lack of human capital resources or any other policy distortion as it goes. So are we going to really see in the future fewer people getting better jobs, bigger peoples having nothing to do with it, and will come into a social protection system of a modern state as we go? So there is a quality, quantity, insider, outsider. My last point is, of course, is the issue of competitiveness and productivity. Now, the productivity analysis is very interesting. The TFP analysis, total factor productivity analysis, and the labor productivity going down, and etc. Are we going to see the capital productivity going up in the coming days, and not necessarily the labor productivity, or the total factor productivity in conjunction with other things over there, where exactly the sources of competitiveness of the future lead will come? That is something over there. Colleagues, I'm trying to understand the dilemmas we are facing, and 4 of them is here, what I put before you. To conclude, the issue is that how do you respond to this? Are we going to stick to the one idea is that jobless growth is not absolutely jobless, it's incrementally jobless. But the issue is that whether we are going to see also the threat of the 4th industrial revolution. I don't know what it actually means. I cannot define it. SACEPS is going to, SACEPS in Colombo is going to redefine 4th industrial revolution. I got scared about it immediately and stayed away from the conference because I hardly understand. But it is the ghost now haunting, the specter of the 4th industrial revolution is haunting South Asia, I can see. The rephrasing marks here. So the issue is over there, over here is that this lead industry argument, which we used to think, and the early deindustrialization argument, how much it is applicable in South Asia in their theoretical sense. So the response, what we see, now you can complain about pseudo-industrial policy. Huh? That's what you call? Don't blame your government when you're out of country. So the issue is very simple. That is it time in the response strategy we move away from a grand industrial policy to much more sectoral approach, if not to cluster or enterprise approach, where the mixes of the policies are quite different from this whole traditional debate of state versus market, external versus domestic market orientation, because some of the sectoral changes, intersectoral changes can be domestic. This is another thing coming up, whether the domestic market is increasing, and we are getting into that. So that is a response strategy. But the concluding line for this is that I think it is now time to look from grand to much more discrete and to take on that. And what I really want in this discussion is that, particularly coming from a small economy, is that we would like to see this in an open economic system, not in a closed, they're looking for jobs only over here. Because this book, as far as I have seen, doesn't look into the migration. The external, which is a very important source of employment for the whole South Asia, including India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and etc. Einstein, in one of his words, said that if you give me 1 hour to solve a problem, I will spend 50 minutes thinking about the problem and 10 minutes on the solution. I got my 10 minutes on the 50 minutes over here. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. There is, in what you said, some stimulus to thinking. So I hope it'll get people thinking. Ambassador Dago Sharing. He is one of the original SACEPS people.
Thank you. I chose to stand up so that I don't knock down all these teacups and the bottles in front of me. Not only that, it just reminded me that somebody said, if you want to be seen, then you have to stand up. And if you want to be heard, you have to speak up. Sometimes my voice tend to sink in myself rather than coming out. So I saw these two microphones here. So I said, maybe it will try to improve my sound and my voice here. Having said this, I want to make just 2 or 3 points. First, of course, I want to thank Sachin for inviting us to this daily process, which brought our SACEP members together and meet with each other and exchange views. And thank you very much. And besides just, of course, Sachin and our chairman, Professor Deepak Naya, have been organizing SACEP from time to time whenever there is an opportunity and conference, important conference in the region. On the sideline, they always convened a meeting of SACEP so that they could, catch up with each other, and whatever progress not making, they could talk about it. So, thank you very much. And we are happy that since 2015, SACEP has been hosted by RIS. And they have been making every effort to keep it going. And thank you very much once again for bringing us together. And congratulations for this very successful Delhi process. I'm attending for the first time, and it was very enlightening for many of us here. And I was telling Sachin that it is indeed a conference of triangular conference because of the 3 continents, specialists and intellectuals getting together and learning from their experience. And it was really wonderful experience. And thank you once again. Now, about this book. I don't have much to say about this. As Professor Bhattacharya said, I'm unbiased too. But reading from the little note that I have read from the background note about the book, it seems it's going to be a very useful book, and it could be a very popular book. Why? Even in Bhutan, a small country, we are now trying to see how we can promote entrepreneurs, small industries. And of course, we have big industrialists, a few big industrialists, and they are also thinking how to expand their activities. So for that, they need people. And they need skills. And they need to know how to go about it. And this book is going to be a very useful reference, as I see from this. I haven't been able to read it, but I'm sure when you go through it, it will be much more interesting. And I was told it reflects the experience in some of our regional countries. So they can learn from their experience and from their mistakes and from their successes too. So I wish all the best to the writers of this book. The point number 2, I have not much to talk about the industries, this and that, because I'm not an industrialist. I'm not a businessman. I'm a retired diplomat. So we all know very little about the industries, and maybe about talking about the conferences here and there. Maybe we have some experience about it. So I may not have much thing to say about this, which I think my speakers before me have very eloquently explained about the book, what it may be containing, and what it is all about. I will make one small comment about SACEP, not for my colleagues who are members of the SACEP, but for some of the audience who are not so familiar with SACEP. South Asia Center for Policy Studies, we call SACEP, I think has been founded by 5 partner institutions. Now, of course, engaged in networking with various organizations, institutions, and civil societies. I feel SACEP, as our chairperson has said, may be low-lying, may not be all that visible for the time being, but has played a very important role and made much contribution to strengthen SAARC, in particular in the larger interest of promoting cooperation in the region, peace, stability, amity, and above all, progress in the region for the people of South Asia. And we have 1.6 billion people in South Asia. And we do realize that we need to do more. But SACEP did make its contribution. How did it make the contributions? I was looking at the website of SACEP, and so far they have organized mega events called the South Asia Economic Summits. And I believe now the next one is 11th one, is going to be held in Colombo. So this is the 11th summit. That means so many of our collaborators, intellectuals, maybe the policymakers will be brought together and talk about SACEP and talk about South Asia and talk about how to make progress and why we are lagging behind, as some people comment. 2, there are a number of publications which SACEP has brought out. 16 publications on policy papers, which I am sure must have been read and reached to many of our policymakers, and I hope it did. Then there are 10 research papers also brought out by SACEP. And these are some of those I have read, and these are really illuminating and interesting. So these are some of the contributions which SACEP has been making, and several conferences, workshops to promote policy dialogue, facilitate interaction with other policymakers in our region, and also with the civil societies organizations, which is very important to bring them in so that share our views with them and they can start working at the grassroots level. According to SAC, there have been this year, 2019, there have been 19 conferences and events and workshops have been held. And when I read about it, I said, these are indeed the journeys of hope in the region. Now, why it is hope? Well, I come from a country where we promote gross national happiness. So happiness is very, 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 very important. Then for happiness, we must have lots of hope. And how do we deliver that hope to our people? We have four pillars: sustainable development, conservation of environment, which is very important for the people, for the environment, for good health. Then we have maintain the tradition and culture. People have to feel comfortable to be happy. So if you don't protect your tradition and culture, people won't be happy. So this is the third. But above all, we emphasize and we attach importance for so far, from the 60s to now, good governance. Without good governance, as somebody was telling us, you plan so many things, but never get implemented. And politicians will say, oh yes, I did promise, but we didn't have this, thing, and we had this problem. We'll do it. You elect me next year. I'll do that next year. So we have to have good governance. So that's the things which give hope to the people. And that is because of that also, today Bhutan is going through a demographic transition. We have lesser number of young people coming up and more elderly people like me standing. Because the gross national happiness, the GNH has given free education and free health services. And so much so, these days I'm looking at the hospitals. Everybody having a cough and cold, they go to the hospital. And why? Because it's free. So they're crowding the desk. So we have to reach to that situation. And that's why there are more elderly people. And because of that, we have now created a Royal Society for Senior Citizens. So for the time being, they made me the president of this Royal Society for Senior Citizens. So I am at present attending to all my friends, septuagenarians and octogenarians. But I can tell you, they have challenges. Until now, I didn't think about it. But when I look at them, there are so many challenges facing them. So we are trying to, help them and see how we can resolve this. So we have resources constrained. Hope we will be able to overcome this soon. But having said this, I said these are journeys of hope in the region. Why? My optimism. Why I am optimistic about it. Everybody knows we have difficulties in the region. And when we have difficulties, we can't move forward. I say this because in South Asia, the member countries are contiguous, next door neighbor. We have so much historical common background. We have common culture. So, as somebody said, there are so many things we can wish away in life, but facts of geography cannot be wished away. So this is the basis of my hope, and I hope this will able to give much more hope to my colleagues and in our region. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Professor Alok Sharma. He's the director of the Institute for Human Development in New Delhi.
I would like to thank Professor Deepak Nayyar and Professor Sachin Chaturvedi for giving me the opportunity to participate in this book launch function. I think it is a very, very timely book in the context of employment generation in South Asia. And like other people, since the book has just arrived from Germany or wherever, with Nupur, but the topic suggests that the book captures the essence of employment problem in South Asia. Many of the speakers and Professor Deepak Nayyar in his introductory remarks also said that the share of manufacturing in South Asia is quite low. In fact, this region is, and maybe, I don't know about Africa also maybe, but this region is one in the world which has not developed according to the historical pattern of development. As developed countries or newly developed countries of East Asia and East Asia, where leading sector has been manufacturing, and after that services sector followed. I consider that this unbalanced pattern of growth, high share of agriculture in employment and low share in GDP, I think this is in all the South Asian countries, to the less extent Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an outlier. This has led to not only slow growth of employment, but also low productive employment. Also, South Asia is one region in the world where informality is one of the highest. It is roughly 70% or 66% in Sri Lanka, ranges from, to 92% in Nepal. Such high level of informality is nowhere in the world, even in African countries. The other characteristic is that 55% of all the workers in this region are self-employed, either in agriculture or non-agriculture. So this all low productivity, high level of informality, I think is related to this unbalanced pattern of growth where agriculture predominates and manufacturing has not played its due role in the growth process. Not that no change is taking place. In fact, during last 2 decades, there has been 10 percentage point shift from agriculture to non-agriculture as a whole in South Asia. But most of these has gone to construction sector. Like this non-farm employment growth in India, 90% has been to construction sector. In other countries also like that. Little has gone to manufacturing sector and some to services sector. I think this slow growth of manufacturing or non-growth of manufacturing, except Bangladesh, it has been pointed out, where garment has played a very important role, has been the key characteristics in all these countries. And as one of the speakers, Professor Bhattacharya, pointed out, and I understand that, this phenomenon has led to lack of a structural transformation in the entire region, with possible exception of Sri Lanka, where more transformation has taken place. Not that nothing has changed. In some countries like in India, IT sector has emerged as a very important sector. And of course in Bangladesh, garment, in Nepal, tourism sector. But these sectors are such a small sectors that they have not given push to other sectors where there has been overall increase in labor productivity and growth. That is why there has been lack of a structural transformation. I think in order to have a structural transformation in South Asia, 3-4 factors are very important. Of course, manufacturing, there has to shift from agriculture to industry, manufacturing, and labor-intensive manufacturing, of course. The other important challenge which is going to happen in South Asia, there will be a spurt in urban growth in next 10-15 years. And the other feature is that the youth bulge which has happened in South Asia earlier, now we are not going to have youth bulge. The labor force is going to age in next 10-15 years. The other challenge is that, and it has been pointed out by some speakers, manufacturing is not the same manufacturing which China did or other developed countries did. It is now, it has changed a lot, and it requires now much more machine compared to earlier years. So all these challenges, so education becomes important. A good quality education now is a very, very important factor in giving push to manufacturing, unlike earlier years when there was no need of a skill or anything. So all these things are very important. The other important aspect, and then I will end, South Asia, in spite of all these globalization and changes, it is one of the least integrated region in the world with the world economy. So global value chain, global production system in manufacturing will play a very important role. And while planning a manufacturing policy, industrial policy, I think all these things need to be taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alag. What I would like, it is already 4:30, so we should be closing now. And I know that all of you, or most of you, have been here for 3 days. So your patience must be wearing thin. Even so, I want to take the liberty of inviting 2 people from the floor, as it were. But may I request you to be brief? 2 minutes each, because I need to give some time to Professor Malhotra, who released the book, and also then to the publisher and to RIS, who have been our hosts, gracious hosts. So may I begin with Dr. Pokhriyal? 2 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. I don't have much comment to make. The only thing is I'm excited to look at the title of the books and then contents, that was stated. I would be happy, to go through this book back in Kathmandu and write up a book review for the publisher and the contributors, Okay. This is what I had done, that when Saman Kaligama had, edited that book. So it was published in Sri Lanka and also in very leading newspaper in Nepal. So I don't want to kill your time, although there are a couple of issues in employment, total factor productivity, tourism sector, transformation, there are a lot of things. Being a university professor, if you give me 2 minutes, I will be speaking for 2 hours. So I will stop it here. Thank you for, giving me opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Pokhriyal. I'd now like to invite Elizabeth. She's not from South Asia, but she's from the South.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's actually been a really fascinating discussion. It's not something that I have focused on in terms of South Asia. So I found the exposition of the various country case studies particularly interesting because of their relevance and I think comparability to my own country, South Africa, but also to the Southern African region. And perhaps just a couple of points there reflecting on Southern Africa, and I think there is much that in the context of South-South cooperation we can exchange here. Because I think certainly in Southern Africa, we are also, and particularly in South Africa, facing a reduction in the contribution of manufacturing to GDP. Certainly South Africa has deindustrialized in certain sectors over the last 25 years. And we've, of course, in the second most diversified economy in the region, Zimbabwe, because of political and economic challenges, seen a similar problem. And those two motors in the region cause ramifications more broadly. We are also the victims of jobless growth. So, well, there have been jobs created, but not sufficient in sufficient numbers to mop up the number of entrants into the economy, into the regional economy every year. And of course, the continent as a whole suffers from really high rates of youth unemployment and high rates of inequality. One of the policies that the region has developed, the sub-region, relates to regional value chains. So if we're going to be developing, if we're going to try to reindustrialize, it's not just about South Africa, but about linking South Africa and Zimbabwe, once it gets over its problems, to regional pipeline of goods so that we can also trade among ourselves. So, and that then relates to the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement, which came into effect literally a few weeks ago. So the approach of developmental regionalism that would allow us to build up our intra-regional trade as a vehicle to tackle unemployment, to tackle inequality, as we also heard a little earlier today.
Thank you. I am out of time, but I see you raise your hand. Pinaki, yes? Yes. But just 1 minute, if you can. Thank you.
Elizabeth has covered quite a bit of what I wanted to say, but I would suggest that, taking the issues, there is something missing which is very important. That is the essential role of the size and its extension, its growth of market. Market of all these countries, excepting India, are very small and also are growing at slow rates. And even if India's market is, large, even there, the growth was jobless, means employment didn't increase. The rate of growth of market depends not on the size of the population, but its capability to buy. Now, as individual countries, even given the extent of inequality, the capability to buy of this population is quite low, and its growth is slow. So when we come together, we are looking at the sum of the market that is created by the integration or preferential trade arrangements or whatever. Now, if all the components of this integration are growing slowly, then it is it is a foregone conclusion that the employment aspect will not be able to grow fast. So what is necessary is not how a particular sector is doing or growing, but how the entire process is giving a booster to the income distribution aspect, whereby the size of the market and capability to buy of the population increases. That's essentially the point. I shouldn't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Professor Malhotra to say a few words. He has been very patient and very gracious to sit through our panel discussion.
Thank you, Professor Deepak Nair. In fact, I came with a mind that today is the occasion that I should be concentrating on knowing from the people more than I should think in terms of speaking my mind, in fact. And, but since a lot of discussion was there regarding productivity also, I do see that leadership causes a big difference in productivity. If people like Sachin Chaturvedi happen to be the leader of an organization, so we could see that productivity difference going till the very concluding session of this two-day program or event, in fact. There are only few things that I intended to say. I know various explanations have been offered, and I need not go into that. And Professor Bhattacharya has rightly put few questions in terms of dilemmas. In fact, I do not know how to say it. In fact, are these really dilemmas or our lack of understanding of the trade-offs that we should be knowing a little more deeply, in fact. And there might be still more questions. I know a number of explanations with regard to the employment generation as a result of industrialization or as a result of industry reaching a prematurity stage. These have come into discussion. One explanation I know, which has very recently come, talks about the technological shift, in fact, that the people who are offering themselves or a part of the labor force do not get skilled enough as would be asked by the increasing demand of the technological shift, including that in the manufacturing sector. So these, I think, are very, very important questions. This is why I think we had a program like Skill in India, and there seems to be quite a consensus on few things, in fact. One being in terms of that as the number of educated people in the various countries in this cooperation, especially from Southeast Asia, is increasing. The size of unemployment is also increasing. That's one kind of understanding. Of course, we may differ in terms of who is replacing whom. In an employment scenario, I'm talking in the context of whether more men are replacing women in the jobs, or these are more women who are replacing men in the job scenario in a country. But what makes us and what should really concern us is that if there are mismatches between our degrees, our level of skills, and the demands of the job, coupled with the shift in technology in manufacturing, I think these are the issues that we really need to understand. And secondly, Professor Bhattacharya, I think, has very rightly pointed out that it's high time that in place of thinking of a policy, an industrial policy at the top or at macro level, it is better that we concentrate on the small details of the various sectors. And maybe the issues like how small and micro enterprises might contribute in this process. We could definitely speak from the examples of, as somebody did say, Far East countries. They tried to develop around a major industry, the ancillaries, in fact. And that did both the jobs. That definitely upskilled the skill levels of the people and also gave good employment in those economies. I think those kind of things, they deserve attention from our side also. I've already, Sachin wanted me to write something at the top of the book, and I did say it's a great initiative involving people from many countries. I think there'll be still more participation in days to come. It's a really very, very good beginning. I would just like to end with two sentences. Talents win games, but teamworks win championships. because in that case, vision remains shared and the success takes care of its own self. And many ideas grow better when transplanted into another mind than the one where they sprang up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I cannot resist the temptation, Debupriya. You know, I want to, when economists don't know the answers, they change the questions. Yeah. May I now invite Nupur Singh, who is the publisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Respected dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, a very good afternoon to all of you. I know this is, I mean, we are moving towards, end of very, very, it must be, you must be waiting to go out and enjoy your weekend. So I'll keep it to the minimum brief because it's basically the work of the two editors and of the authors. And of course, SACEPS, who started the project and gave the starting, vision to them to put this work together, which will speak for itself. And I would like to congratulate each and every person who was involved in bringing it out together. Special thanks to Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. Of course, Sabyasachi helped a lot towards especially towards the end in ensuring that the books are there on the dais. Really, I mean, a heartfelt thanks for that as well. I would just like to add a few lines about the series that we are publishing, which is actually bringing together these 4 organizations of South Asia. So it's the South Asia Economic and Policy Studies, of which this book is a part. This is the 6th book published in that in the series, and already this series has garnered some 2,000 downloads from various institutions and readers all over the world. So as the Professor Nair mentioned in the beginning, that maybe it's time to to spread the word and the research and internationalize. Maybe this would answer your question, and we would be very happy to collaborate further on such initiatives, which will bring a lot of these collaborative efforts and regional research together and put it forth for a global audience. With that, I would like to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nupur. Last but not least, I'm going to invite Sabyasachi Saha to do the vote of thanks. But before that, I would like to thank, on behalf of all of us, Sachin and Sabyasachi for their labor in putting this volume together. And that it has seen the light of day, the credit is due entirely to the two of them. Sabyasachi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Before going into what I am supposed to be doing in presenting the vote of thanks, I just wanted to share a little thought as a co-editor. When you have to apply to the publisher for the publication, there is a book form, and you have to detail out several things in terms of the background, the concept note, the themes, the authors, and everything. And towards the end, there comes a question where they ask you the unique selling point. And then I thought that isn't it obvious? I have explained everything in the context, in the authors, and then I just wanted to make it very unique, and just put in a line that it stands on the shoulder of the giants. But then I resisted myself. I wrote a few lines again. As academics, we don't really have selling points, it's knowledge points rather. So having said that, we are extremely grateful to Professor Malhotra for sparing his time. Thank you, sir, for your kind presence and agreeing to launch this volume. And it was extremely interesting to hear your last punchlines towards the end, and we carry that message with us, definitely. We are highly indebted to Professor Nair for the enormous support, guidance, and encouragement that we have received from you, sir, in SACEPS work. And the foreword written by you is indeed the jewel in the crown. Words of praise that coming from Professor Dubey, Muchkund Dubey, Professor Mustafizur Rahman, Dr. Nagesh Kumar, Dr. Dushni, in the form of endorsement for the volume is deeply appreciated, and we remain very grateful to all of them. This volume is an outcome of the collective wisdom of all partner think tanks, and their constant support in the process has been the biggest source of strength. And Dr. Famida Dedi and Dr. Posh, they are with us today, this afternoon. We also thank all the participants of the 2 workshops that were organized in this very room, which helped us move forward in the agenda and delve deep into the research questions. As always, we remain extremely grateful to Deopriyo sir, Ambassador Shering, Alak sir for being with us today and for your unflinching support and guidance and enriching us with your insights and wisdom. Finally, on my personal behalf, I wholeheartedly acknowledge the opportunity of getting to work with SACEPS project. And of course, it is a tall order and privilege to have worked with all of you and editing the volume with DigiSir. The mentoring that I received from Professor Mohanty in contributing towards the volume, it was almost an extended PhD. I thought of it as a postdoc being done with him. To conclude, I would be failing in my duty if I do not acknowledge the enormous support that we received from the publisher. And publishing houses are these days nameless, faceless value chains. For us, Nupurji was, I went back to her. Without her, it would have been very difficult, until the last moment, as she has mentioned. I must also acknowledge the support extended by TSG at the copy editing stage of this volume. Last but not the least, I place on record our appreciation for the financial support received from the Asia Foundation in undertaking this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you. You are invited for tea now.
Once again, congratulations. Good to see you here. We met in Kathmandu.